In the Infernal Devices at my team Jam or Team Will. I mean, you can't have a team when you can fix the outcome. Like, you can't root for a sports team when you can, like, when you know which one of them is going to win already. So, there's a point. So, like, and whatever team I was, that would be the way that it turned out. So, I always think that's like a clever, like, side way of asking me what happened. I'm totally team, you know, Will, but that's not what's gonna happen. So I really was working very hard with the Infernal Devices to write a love triangle that Holly would like, actually, because she is most cantankerous and does not like love triangles, and I was always asking her, you know, well, would you like this or would you like that one? And so I promised I would write her a love triangle that was so balanced, that was so difficult to predict how it would turn out, and where the main character, you know, had a really solid, good moral reason for, you know, making the decisions that she made and wasn't actually waffling between the two boys. I was like, I promise you all of these things, you know, then will you like it? And she was like, I might like it. She hates love triangles and zombies, so I think like the worst thing for her would be a zombie love triangle. One day. But I don't think it worked out, right?
Kobayashi Maru.
Yes. She gave me the highest praise of all when I gave her Clockwork Prince to read. She said, you have created the Kobayashi Maru of love triangles. Kobayashi Maru, for those who do not know, from Star Trek, is the no-win situation. She was like, there's no way out of this one. So, yes, my answer is I don't have a team, except that I guess I am Team Tessa. I want her to be happy and make the right decisions.
How many months of research did you have to do for the Mortal Instruments series? Like, in total, do you think?
Mortal Instruments? Mortal Instruments is a lot less research than Infernal Devices. But it was a lot of research. It was a lot of sort of reading up on folklore, mostly in mythology. But the thing about research is it's not like you sort of do a burst of research and then you write. It's really ongoing as you write. You have to sort of research because you don't know exactly what's going to come up. So I'd say I did, 3 or 4 months of research before I started. And then I've continued sort of ongoing with the research for Mortal Instruments and also Infernal Devices. I have separate bookshelves for both of them. They're sort of big sets of bookshelves, and one of them is like all the Infernal Devices reference material, the other one's all the Mortal Instruments reference material.
Well, what was inspired you to write your first book?
I think it was going with my friend to her tattoo shop and having her show me the designs and getting that idea that sort of stuck in my head of what if there was a race of people who had these, rune tattoos and they were magic and it really, worked for them. Well, what would they do? Well, I guess they'd probably be warriors. Well, who would they fight? Demons. It sort of goes like that. You ask yourself questions, you answer the questions, and then you sort of get caught up in the idea of the world. Alvin? Yes, you and then you.
Okay. Is it true you're gonna kill somebody off in the last book?
Yes. I like killing people. It brings me pleasure. I feel like, there's these things, we call them character shields. And that means that you reading the book and you believe, that character is protected and they're not going to die. And I want you never to feel that way about anybody. Anybody can die at any point for any reason. So yeah, one of the major characters dies in Clockwork Princess and also in City of Heavenly Fire. What time of day do I like to write? Late at night. I'm not a morning person. I hate getting up in the morning. I'm kind of a zombie in the morning. So I generally kind of rev up into actually being able to write at about like 2 in the afternoon. And then I have a word count per day, so it basically is just how long does it take me to hit that word count. I have to write, 2,000 words, 3,000 words, depending on, how on deadline I am. And when I am finished, then I can stop, and that's it for the day. But, and sometimes that 3,000 words takes 2 hours because I'm, feeling inspired. Sometimes it takes 10 hours because I'm not feeling inspired. So it really depends. But I'm much more likely to work like super late into the night than I am ever to get up in the morning.
She's having
Infernal Devices, which character's personality is my favorite. Oh, it's really, that's so difficult. I love them all, but different things about them, you know. I love Cassandra because she loves books, and that's something with which I can really relate. I love Will because he's, you know, poor boy, he's never been happy, you know, like for a minute. And I love Jim because he's incredibly self-sacrificing and just like, writing Jem was sort of the challenge of trying to write a character who's just like just basically incredibly nice and good and make them interesting. So hopefully it worked. I had to give him like a drug habit and a bunch of other things, but he's nice and sweet. I love Henry because he's completely crazy and is always inventing crazy things. And I love Charlotte because she's a really strong woman in a time where being a really strong woman was not an advantage. But she, you know, but she is, it's her nature. She's actually really great at running the Institute, even though nobody really wants to see a woman in that position. And she sort of fights with a very quiet strength that I admire a lot.
What was your motivation for doing the second series? And do you see a point in time where the two converge?
You mean what was my motivation in extending?
Like going back in time?
Oh, going back in time. I love the world of the Shadowhunters, and I deliberately built it really big so that it could contain a lot of different stories. And I was in England, and I was promoting City of Bones, and I was walking over Blackfriars Bridge, which, if you've read Infernal Devices, you know is very important landmark, and I had a sudden mental vision of this girl and boy in sort of period dress standing on the bridge, and then from behind them was coming this army of clockwork creatures silently that they couldn't see what they were coming up on. It was very creepy. And I was like, oh, I ran home and like back to the flat I was renting and wrote it down, like this is my idea, you know, this is the image I have in my head, you know, and I don't know what it means exactly yet. And so, but you know, I knew from the period dress, I knew it was Victorian, and so I just sort of tossed it, just sort of ran it over in my mind for a while, for about 6 months after that, while I was working on the other books. And there, you know, you always have other ideas while you're working on a book, and they come and they're like, I have a shiny new idea. Oh, look at me. I'm much sexier than the book that you're writing. You want to be with me? You don't want to be with that other book. And you're like, yeah. But you know, you write them down. A lot of them go away after a while, but the ones that really stick with you and keep developing and adding on to them, like I would wake up and be like, I know who those characters are on the bridge. Okay, I know that Tessa's, I know she's American, I know she's come over to England, and then I would, the next day I'd be like, I know she has a shape-shifting power, I know, you know, that it's going to work this way, and, you know, and my ancestors of the people, you know, like this group of people is just generally the ancestors of the people in the Mortal Instruments, and I love Victorian London, and I was like, clearly what I want to do is write this. So I approached my editor and was like, I'd like to write a prequel, and she wrote back and was like, oh, like about, you know, Valentine and Jocelyn, that'd be great. And I was like, no, I want to set it 135 years ago. And he was like, oh, I don't know. But it worked out. So. And you had a question, I'm sorry.
Yes, what was your inspiration for making Magnus Bane Asian?
Because the image that I got for Magnus, I sort of knew his personality, but I wasn't exactly sure what he looked like. I was getting my nails done, and I picked up this magazine, and it had this. It was like a sort of a J-pop band magazine, and as I was flipping through it, there was this picture of this guy, and he had the green nails, and he had spiked up hair, and he was wearing rainbow pants, and I was just like, this guy is awesome! Like, who doesn't want to party with this dude? And like, and so that was the image of Magnus that fixed itself in my mind, was this guy who was clearly, actually biracial, he was clearly half Asian, but, you know, and so when I wrote about Magnus, that was just what he was. And he's very hot.
What's your favorite scene in all of the
Oh God, I'm trying to think of scenes that I enjoyed the most. there's a ton. I mean, there's a ton. It's really hard to pick. I mean, I love the scene where Alec and Magnus kiss each other in the big hall in City of Glass, and everyone's like, "Oh my god!" That was fun. I felt like that was like a good moment for Alec. And for Infernal Devices, well, I think. I mean, it's really tough because there's so many different scenes that I enjoy writing them all in different ways. But actually, nobody will agree with me, but I did enjoy the end scene with Will and Tessa and Clockwork Prince because I kept writing it over and over again and being like, this scene has to make you cry, and then I would give it to Holly and be like, are you crying? It was horrible. It was horrible because she had to keep reading the same scene over and over again. And also, it got more like emotionally horrible each time, and she was like, stop, can't make me mad. Only when she actually was interested did I let up on her, so that was kind of fun for me. It was fun for everybody else, probably. Sorry, Holly's my like experimental mouse.
Where did you get the ideas for those randomly hilarious scenes, like the one where Henry is just ranting about how much he loves eggs?
Oh God, right. I mean, it's just oddly. A lot of times, actually, when I'm writing those scenes, I'll have my friends sit around with me, and I'm like, "You're Henry, and you're Will, and you're Jim, and you're Tessa, and I'm, Charlotte, and now we're gonna talk." And we just talk, and kind of, I'll ramble, and some of it is, obviously completely pointless. But some of it will turn out to be like hilarious or useful or apt, and I'll wind up writing that stuff down. And I believe I can't remember the exact origin of the egg thing, but it had something to do with some uncle in my husband's family who had been totally normal his entire life and then got up one day and was like, eggs, I hate all eggs, and left the house and never returned to his family, and we don't know what happened to him. So I think that was the inspiration for the egg thing. And yeah, I have to say one of my other favorite scenes was the one where, and I don't even remember where this idea came from at all, but it was the one where Simon comes out or talks about coming out as a vampire to his mom by using the how to tell your parents you're gay. Mom and Dad, I am undead. The undead are just like you and me. Maybe more like me than you. You may have some preconceived notions about the undead, but I was reborn this way. That was one of my favorite scenes to write. I have literally no idea where the hell that came from. Oh, yes, Magnus. I know, right? He's pretty high. He's like the hottest man in the world. I was like, you have to cast me, for Magnus. I was like, this is my one casting request. You must cast an Asian actor, and he must be hot. This first I was like, you must cast an Asian actor, and they were like, what about this guy? And I was like, he is 55. We talk about Magnus again. I was like, he must be Asian and he must be hot, and now go do whatever it is you need to do. And they were like, okay. And they came back and they, what about this guy? And I was like, Jesus Christ. I was like, you really took that one to heart. Oh my God, he's ridiculous. He's professionally hot. This is really nice. He's emailed a bunch of times, and every time that he emails me, I want to email back and be like, what is it like to be so tall and pretty? Very strange. I never restrain myself.
For the movie, are you going to be there when they're filming everything?
I can't be there while they're filming everything because it's gonna take months, and I can't sit there on set for months. I don't think I'm invited for months. They'd be like, why are you still here? And also I have a house. So they did invite me to come up for the pre-production for a week, right before they start shooting, to kind of watch the actors rehearse their lines and hopefully tweak lines that aren't working. So that would be great. And then they asked me to come up also during the actual production when they're actually doing the filming and watch some of that. So I'm hoping that does happen and that the schedule stuff all works out, because I think I don't know if they'll ever make other movies of my books, but I feel like it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to kind of see people bring your this thing that you created kind of to life in that way. I love movies and I love the idea of seeing the movie on screen. So I'm excited about that.
You're so amazing, and we love all your books. But
What I appreciate the most about you is that you have time to answer Tumblr questions or Twitter, and I see you like come on a little bit and you'll just go through like a whole mass of messages. How do you find time to do that, or do you really, I don't know, not a lot of authors have time to do it. So,
I like where you're like,
I don't know.
You're like, nah, you're like, I know those authors. They're out there, they're like face down in a pile of meth. They're like, you're not doing the stuff they should. Well, okay, I mean, one thing you have to keep in mind is a lot of authors are really, really, really shy and weird. Alright? We're a shy bunch of people, so not everybody is like necessarily cut out for like being kind of like online in public and answering questions and whatnot. I happen to like it, you know, and so basically the way that I find time is that I have the, I mean, you said, you know, you'll see me online in bursts and I'll answer a bunch of questions, and that's pretty much because I have this set schedule of like writing a certain amount of words, and so if I am done early, you know, if I have like a really good day and I manage to knock out the words in like, you know, 2 or 3 hours, then I'll be like, great, so today I can go online and I can answer a bunch of questions and I can kind of try to be there for people and, you know, answer the questions they have that are the most common and, you know, all of that stuff. So usually if you see me suddenly pop up and I'm answering a bunch of questions, it means I had a good writing day.
In the Mortal Instruments, Simon talks a lot about Dungeons and Dragons and like World of Warcraft and stuff. Where did you hear about those games?
I know nothing about them, I have to say, but my best friend is a big Dungeons and Dragons gamer, as my husband is too, and Holly is. They're actually all in a gaming group together. I'm not like trying to embarrass you. This is actually true. Ali and Theo are, and and my best friend and her husband, whose name is Eric, and his best friends Kirk and Matt are huge gamers. So part of how I wound up kind of giving Simon some of that personality was that when I first created the world for the Shadowhunters, I set up all of the rules, how the weaponry worked, how the, you know, magic worked, and then I kind of gave it, you know, all of my notes to Eric and Kirk and Matt, and I said, run a game in this world, because I thought, you know, if you can run a game in this world, you can create characters, if you can run them through this magic system and you can make it work, then this magic system works and you can't break it. And so I gave them, you know, the notes, and they gave me a couple of notes on things that didn't work, or like, you know, how does this work, how does that work, and so I fixed those things in the book. And so as we were doing it, they were also explaining to me about Dungeons and Dragons and how it worked, and so I gave Simon some of that personality, and actually the habit of calling humans mundanes came from them too, because they call all people who don't play Dungeons and Dragons mundanes all the time. So they were like, well, a mundane like you might not understand. What are you calling me? And they were like, well, people who don't play Dungeons and Dragons are mundanes. And I was like, oh, come on, we'll take that, put it in the book, you know. So they, you know, in gratitude for them running the whole system, Eric and Kirk and Matt are all characters in City of Bones. They are Simon's bandmates, so we see them every once in a while. And that is why Simon is a gamer.
Hi, I was wondering, after you're done with the Shadowhunter world, is there anything you're really interested in writing about next?
Yeah, actually, after I'm done with I don't know when I will be done with the Shadowhunter world, but when when Mortal Instruments finishes, there is another Shadowhunter series that comes after it called The Dark Artifices, that's set 5 years later. But at the same time, I'm also doing a project with Holly. We're writing a 5-book series together called The Magisterium, and for some reason the contents are deadly secret, so I'm not sure how to summarize it exactly, but it is contemporary fantasy with a boy main character named Callum Hunt, and about his sort of adventures. And the first book is called The Iron Trial and comes out in 2014. So I'm really excited about that. I think it's going to be really different from the Shadowhunter world, and it's going to be really fun, and I'm really sort of has an alchemical based magic system that I'm really excited about.
Did we ever get to find out what Magnus got taken out of Peru?
Did we ever get to find out why Magnus was banned from Peru? I don't know. I've been going back and forth on it, because like part of me just feels like it's funnier if you don't know why. Like he's just like, well, we can go to Peru. Oh no, wait, we can't go there. I'm banned. Why? And I'm like, I just feel like ideas you can cook up in your head are probably better than whatever I could come up with. But part of me thinks it would be funny to reveal why Magnus was banned from Peru. So I'm only going to say that for the moment, I'm not planning on revealing why Magnus was banned from Peru. The whole country of Peru. But maybe in the future, we will find out.
What made you change your mind to continue the Mortal Instruments series?
What made me decide to extend the Mortal Instruments series? The Mortal Instruments series was supposed to end with City of Glass, but then it was supposed to spin off into graphic novels. I had a graphic novel deal set up, and I had written this whole plot line about what was going to happen afterwards. And then the company went out of business, so the graphic novel deal fell through. So I had these scripts for what the graphic novels were going to what was going to happen in them, and I had this idea for the plot, and I had deliberately left a bunch of stuff sort of untied up at the end of City of Glass. Like nothing so, I felt was so significant that you couldn't, end there and kind of be okay. But there, Simon's love life wasn't resolved, our villain's body was missing, usually an indicator if something is going on. The Fairy Queen was making some dark pronouncements to Clary about what might or might not be true about her past. So I felt like, there were little hooks in there that the graphic novel could hang off of, but also, you could stop there and be alright. But then when they canceled the graphic novel because they went out of business, I was like, well, I have this whole plot story and I have nothing to do with it, and I really did want, to write it, and I wanted people to read it. And so my agent at the time said, maybe you should think about just turning this in as an outline to Simon & Schuster and saying, with my publishers, and saying, what would you think if I wrote this story as 3 more books? And so that's what I wound up doing. So that is how it happened.
How is church still alive?
I love this question because the question is, how is church still alive? Church the cat. I love this question because we have a world of like warlocks and demons and angels coming down and giving people weaponry and all this other stuff happening. And people are always like, why is this cat still alive? I'm like, amongst all the other stuff that's going on. But I understand because, the cat seems like part of the mundane world, like why is it still alive? So if you read the Infernal Devices, you will, the reading, the introduction of Church is in Clockwork Angel, and he has had a number of, he was kidnapped by our villains and experimented upon, so he had a number of strange dark spells performed upon him while one of the Dark Sisters was trying to raise the dead. And these resulted in Church being an immortal cat. He doesn't have any special powers. He's not, like, actually a warlock in disguise. He, isn't particularly smart, but he's a cat, and he's immortal. That's the only thing he's got going on. He will live forever, and he will probably always live with Shadowhunters. So, I just thought it was, I don't know why, but I like the idea.
Two-parter question. What inspires you from a reading perspective? And this is not a request to tip off, promote something, convert someone else, but also the second part is, do you have to read something different while you're writing and in between novels?
I guess, okay, so you don't want specific titles, so I guess
yeah, you can if you want, but only if it really, if you're really inspired. What inspired you?
I mean, there were definitely a lot of books that I found really inspirational, when I started writing City of Bones. All of the urban fantasy that was sort of written during the 80s, there was a huge boom in people writing, the genre was sort of invented back then of bringing magic into the contemporary world, and there was a big boom of people writing it, and then it sort of faded out, and so, the idea of that urban fantasy that I'd sort of grown up with and really loved was a big inspiration. And I remember reading Philip Pullman's The Golden Compass while I was working in a bookstore and just thinking, wow, I was so shocked that this was like a YA book and it was doing all this incredibly complicated stuff with religion and identity and gender, and I was like, this is fantastic. I just really, the YA of my childhood was not what YA is now with these really, complicated and interesting books, and so I was like, wow, I didn't realize that you could kind of do this. So that was very inspirational. And I don't know Philip Pullman, I'm not pushing his books for him to get Sorry. This is true. And then while I'm actually writing books, I do tend to read things that are really wildly different in genre from whatever I'm reading, just to kind of get away from whatever is going on in urban fantasy at the time, just so I don't either absorb ideas or get freaked out by ideas that are similar to mine. It's very easy to read a book and be like, oh my god, I have a cat that lives forever, and this person has a cat that lives forever. I gotta kill the cat. This stuff is always gonna happen, and there'll always gonna be overlaps, because the thing that makes a genre is the fact that they have things in common. So I think for to not get freaked out, and to not and to kind of keep myself in my own voice. I don't tend to read stuff that's in my genre while I'm writing, but I tend to read outside the genre. So I read a lot of contemporary. I read a lot of mysteries. And noir mysteries too. Holly has turned me on to noir mysteries recently, so I've been reading a bunch of those. I'll read a lot of contemporary YA, like John Green's books. So stuff that's that's very different tonally. But then when I take breaks in between books, I'll go back and read. Oh, and I'll read a lot of high fantasy, which is very, very different from contemporary. So I want to read the George R. R. Martin books. I'm terrified that they'll never actually be finished. So I keep reaching for them and then being like, no, but I want to. I shouldn't. I want to. So I'll probably I read his vampire novel Fever Dream though, and that was really amazing. So I'll probably crack and read them eventually. Probably take about 3 or 4 more questions. Yeah. Another cat question.
Where did you come up with the name Chairman Meow?
I had a friend who had a cat named Chairman Meow. It's totally not that exciting for me. I'm sorry. My friend Alex lived in England, and he had a cat called Chairman Meow, and yeah, that's really the whole story. I was like, that's funny. I'm stealing that. When you're a writer, you're like, this thing that actually happened, I'm taking it. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I've neglected you guys, so go.
Okay, I'm going to try and say it without spoiling, but in Lost Souls, Clary misses an appointment with a very important downworlder, and it's never mentioned again. Like, they say it's a bad thing, and it's never mentioned again. So is that going to come back to haunt her in the last book?
Yes. Oh, yes. There's a lot of stuff that's sort of seeded into Lost Souls that comes back and bites everybody in the City of Heavenly Fire. The book in which everything is yes, it'll come back to her. Never miss appointments with very important downrollers.
Can you tell us why Will hates ducks?
A whole beautiful story about why Will hates ducks. It's very moving, but you get to read it. Okay, I'll tell you the real story of why Will hates ducks, which there's nothing to do with Will. I was in London researching for the Infernal Devices, and I wanted to go to Hyde Park because in Clockwork Angel, Jessamine and Tessa walk around Hyde Park, so it actually hasn't changed all that much in the intervening years. So I went to Hyde Park with my friend Sarah Reese Brennan, who's also a writer, writes great books, and she just happened to be in London at the same time that I was, so we went to Hyde Park together, and she brought a little picnic. And she had gone to Harrods, and she's Irish, so she bought what she thought was English food, which turned out to be like terrible ducks! We're in a race of killer ducks! And I was like, well, too late to do anything about it now. I threw the rest of the pie into the river, and then the ducks finished it, and sure enough, they came after us. Because we had no more pie, not because they were cannibal ducks, and so Sarah took off running, screaming at the top of her lungs, cannibal ducks! And I was like, well, okay, so I chased her, and we escaped the ducks. But I was trying, in Clockwork Angel, I wanted to give Will and Jem a story to tell about something